On April 9, Oklahoma State University hosted a drag queen story hour for children as young as 2 years old on its campus. The event was part of the university's Pride 2022 celebration. A description for the program stated 2 drag performers would read books to all attendees and that the drag queen story hour was geared toward children between the ages of 2 to 8, but that all ages were welcome to join in on the fun. You heard right. A major university, paid for by the good conservative citizens here in the heartland of America, is openly declaring that it is working to groom our children and that they are starting when they are as young as 2 years old. This nonsense is pervasive across our nation. What happens in Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas. If it's happening in Oklahoma, it is happening in your own backyard. You've been told before of the Chicago Public School District, where they now provide prophylactics to all 5th graders throughout the city's school system because they want to make condoms available to students when they think they need them. You've been told before of the Arizona Department of Education's promotion of books and research papers that claim babies as young as 3 months old already harbor sexual biases that demand the state's intervention. You've been told before of New York City's Justine Enfant, who proudly defends teaching 1st graders in Manhattan how to masturbate while at the same time teaching porn literacy to juniors at New York's Columbia Grammar and Prep. And then there is the National Education Association. You've been told before of this organization's official declaration at its last annual conference, where its members voted to codify the following: we resolve to develop a study to critique cis-heteropatriarchy. In other words, the NEA is telling you straight up that they will be teaching your children that 2-parent families, traditional morality and heterosexual fidelity should be dismantled and replaced by their neo-Marxist sexual nihilism. You've been told before of Bartlesville Public Schools in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, where they now openly promote Toni Morrison's book, The Bluest Eye, which includes a full-page salacious description of a father raping his daughter. You have been repeatedly told of all of this. You've also been told of last summer's production of the San Francisco Gay Men's Choir, where they sang over and over and over again, "We'll convert your children." It happens bit by bit, quietly and subtly, and you will barely notice it. We'll convert your children. Yes, we will. There's really no escaping it. We'll convert your children. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for your children. We'll convert your children. The bottom line is this: your public schools are grooming your children. This is just a fact. They admit it. They are doing it openly and without apology, and they are starting before your children can even recite their ABCs. This is not a QAnon conspiracy, nor is it the moral panic of homophobic conservatives who are just freaking out. This garbage is real. It is simply and clearly a fact. But there's more. Not only are your local schools abusing your sons' and daughters' hearts, minds and souls, but they are also abusing their bodies. America's public schools have become hunting grounds for sexual predators. Chris Rufo reported the following: the most comprehensive analysis concerning sexual abuse in America's public schools, published by the U.S. Department of Education, estimates that nearly 10% of K-12 students have been victims of sexual misconduct by a public school employee. In case you missed it, Mr. Rufo just shined a light on the ugly fact that our own government is admitting our public schools are sexually abusing 10% of your children. That's more than 4.5 million children nationwide. In 2014, the Government Accountability Office published a report warning of all this. They said that public school employees were grooming students with the intent to perpetrate future sexual abuse or misconduct. That misconduct includes grooming and chemically castrating your child to validate their woke agenda. They told us that educators were exhibiting patterns of grooming behaviors such as sexually charged communication aimed at explicit sexual contact with the child. Pushing drag queen story hours for 2-year-olds at Oklahoma State. Distributing condoms to 5th graders in Chicago. Teaching masturbation to 1st graders in New York. Fixing sexual biases of 3-month-old babies in Arizona. Critiquing cis-heteropatriarchy at the National Education Association. And readings on salacious incest in Bartlesville. Maybe when they tell us, we'll convert your children, We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for your children. We should start believing them.
There are way too many people arguing way too hard to tell kids what they do with their peepees.
To explain critical race theory, it helps to begin with a brief history of Marxism. Originally, the Marxist left built its political program on the theory of class conflict. Karl Marx believed that the primary characteristic of industrial societies was the imbalance of power between capitalists and workers. The solution to that imbalance, according to Marx, was revolution. The workers would eventually gain consciousness of their plight, seize the means of production, overthrow the capitalist class, and usher in a new socialist society. It failed, over and over and over. But rather than abandon their political project, Marxist scholars in the West simply adapted their revolutionary theory to the social and racial unrest of the 1960s. Abandoning Marx's economic dialectic of capitalists and workers, they substituted race for class and sought to create a revolutionary coalition of the dispossessed based on racial, ethnic, or more recently, gender categories. Critical race theory is an academic discipline, formulated in the 1990s and built on the intellectual framework of identity-based Marxism. Relegated for many years to universities and obscure academic journals, it has increasingly become the default ideology in our public institutions over the past decade. It has been injected into government agencies, public school systems, teacher training programs, and corporate human resources departments, in the form of diversity training programs, human resources modules, public policy frameworks, and school curricula. Basically, they're indoctrinating your kids to be good little communists.
It was a very interesting report from the superintendent. She said she heard us. How can you hear somebody when you're not there? The arrogance of this executive staff and these board members are not showing up at that meeting and using the cockamamie excuses I just heard of the legislature. You know what? You may be getting a civics lesson. I invite everybody to stay till the end of this. There are people out here who've had a little bit of experience of working with the government and this, and public speaking, and actually doing things in this community to move it forward. We ain't getting paid for it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. We don't get a title. We actually make things move. Just like that. That is the biggest cop-out. The legislature, you know what you have the ability to do? Is lobby that legislature with the lobbyists you hire with the money you take from us at the point of a gun. Yeah, how do you get your tax money if it isn't by the force of the firearm, Mr. Hunt? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about now. That is. And that's what you get. These people right here and across from me, they probably know, but they try to snow each and every one of you out here every day. That's why we're here. That's why we're in that. That's why you see the latest report in the Wall Street Journal. Kids are now have a less life expectancy because of what the torture we put them through with COVID and the lockdowns and making them crazy with all the stuff we're doing. Oh yeah, I think a few of us are a little bit concerned. I know some that are not. Because if you were, you would be doing that. We wouldn't have to. That's why we elected you. You are our representatives to be taking care of the education and safety of our children. And I submit to you, and I think the vast majority of the public, and I think the evidence shows you are failing miserably at that endeavor. That has got to change. That will change. Because we're not going to let you destroy the future of our kids. because that is just totally 100% off the table.
You know you're in a cult if 1. You believe you are what your imagination says you are. Delusional, characterized by or holding false beliefs or judgments about external reality that are held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, typically as a symptom of a mental condition. You know you're in a cult if 6. You believe reality isn't real. Delusional, characterized by or holding false beliefs or judgments about external reality that are held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, typically as a symptom of a mental condition. You know you're in a cult if 10. Thanks to Jamie Lee Curtis, who didn't know how many Oscars she'd won, them can't count. You know you're in a cult if 11. You will cry in protest to take a real black woman off a syrup bottle and a Quaker off a box of oats named Quaker Oats, only to put a fake white woman on a beer can. All while saying, I can't believe they're so upset over a beer can. Bud Light parent Anheuser-Busch's stock has lost $27 billion over Dylan Mulvaney. You know you're in a cult if 13. If you get triggered because someone doesn't think you're special because you were born into one of the CRT-approved victim groups, they believe deeds and personal responsibility warrant pride. You know you're in a cult if 18. Lost your shit over To Kill a Mockingbird and Huckleberry Finn but are screaming about banning books with gay sex and masturbation in school libraries. Even though the books aren't banned, you can purchase and beat off to them at your leisure. You know you're in a cult if 20. Will lie even with irrefutable evidence. You know you're in a cult if 21. Being so filled with hate, you will groom, mutilate, and murder your own children, all while calling your opposition fascists. You know you're in a cult if 22. Believes that out of 7 billion people on the planet, white, straight, males are somehow oppressing everyone else. You know you're in a cult if 23. Will lose your shit when someone points out that you're not oppressed, you're just stupid. You know you're in a cult if 25. Will refer to a biology book as right-wing propaganda. You know you're in a cult if 26. Will lose your shit if someone actually uses proper English, instead of your made-up pronouns. You know you're in a cult if 32. Are the same people who say you can't indoctrinate kids to be gay with a book or a drag show, but continually accuse the church of doing that very thing. Although religion isn't taught in schools, and you're not forced to go to church. You know you're in a cult if 33. When someone is simply talking science and common sense, you will try to bring religion into it. Well, you know the church. Well then, don't go to church. It's not against the law. Not going to school is. You know you're in a cult if 34. Will use unrelated behavior to justify their sick, grooming behavior. You know you're in a cult if 38. You resort to insults as you can't handle the truth. Delusional, characterized by or holding false beliefs or judgments about external reality that are held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, typically as a symptom of a mental condition. Patients with schizophrenia may show dysfunctional impulsivity and impulsive aggression. You know you're in a cult if 39. Will lose your shit when someone says you're in a woke cult, and to prove you're not, you do the things on this list over and over and over. You know you're in a cult if 40. Will accuse your opposition of that which you are guilty. You know you're in a cult if 46. Consider chemically castrating a pedophile horrible and inhumane, but chemically castrating a child just dandy.